Do it too then.
Yeah. Okay. Hello everyone, we are team members from the Research and Insights Department at the Lumps Consultancy Group, which is a premier student-led consultant group in Pakistan. We work with clients from a variety of sectors such as banks, venture capitals, research organizations, and NGOs. This has given us the incredible opportunity to solve real-world business problems and interact with clients and really learn how the industry works from within. As part of this ongoing process, we started this podcast series as a new project to sort of create P2P content and engage with the industry leaders in Pakistan.
And today we're joined by someone who's at the heart of Pakistan's tech and entrepreneurial revolution, Mr. Monis Rahman. He pioneered Pakistan's first digitized job platform, Rozee, and he also pioneered digital financial services through Hinja. And right now he is working on Dukan.pk, where he's providing a digitized platform to retailers and distributors. He is a graduate from Stanford in engineering, and he has worked in Intel and AMD, and he later entered the ecosystem of startups, and he has a long list of startups that he has worked with. Okay.
So it's an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you here with us. Let's start from the very beginning. You have an undergraduate degree in electrical engineering, and from that you've grown to become sort of one of the biggest names in the entrepreneurship sector in Pakistan. So, what inspired you to sort of go down this route, and what were some challenges you faced, and how did that shape the way that you view the business sector within Pakistan?
First of all, thank you guys so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's very interesting now when I reflect back a number of years and how I got to sort of where I am doing entrepreneurial things in Pakistan. My aspiration was, so if I start from the very beginning, I didn't want to be a doctor, and this was the main choice I had in front of me, कि या तो doctor बनो या engineer, और अगर वो भी नहीं बन सकते फिर lawyer ठीक है. So I grew up in that sort of environment. Everybody in my family was a doctor. I didn't want to be a doctor because I like to be creative and build things, and I thought it was memorization and it was boring. So the best choice I had at that time was engineering. I chose electrical engineering because I was fascinated by wires and motors. So I did my undergraduate degree in electrical and computer engineering. And with a few extra classes, you also get a major in computer science. So it was very much computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering sort of a background. And when I first started, it honestly wasn't very exciting for me to be learning about, transistors and sort of signal processing and Laplace transforms. And I couldn't really translate it back to something I was passionate about. But then what happened was I took a computer engineering course, and we actually made a CPU. We actually built a computer from scratch on its components, and all of a sudden it just opened up so much awareness of how we're able to take things with bits and bytes and turn them into these magical processors that can do amazing things. So having that insight and knowledge was exciting, and in those days Intel was leading the world. Microprocessors were being created at Intel. That was the place to work. Intel mein jo log the, the key employees there, the same people who invented the memory chip, the flash memory chip, the early chips, the 286, the 386, 486. So Intel was leading this industry. So obviously my dream was to work at Intel. And so I interviewed. Intel was very competitive in who it hired. So ek do rounds mein, I was a sophomore, and mujhe wo nahi mila because there were a lot smarter people than me. And then I was so persistent, I kept calling the recruiter at Intel. And I said, yeah, koi job hai, we'll let you know. Out of the blue, in the middle of a semester, I get a call and they say, hey, we're starting a call center at Intel, but we need people to start next week. That would mean I had to drop all my classes. I said, no problem. I dropped all my classes. I moved to Intel, and I became the first employee of the Intel call center. And basically my job was to answer very complicated questions on their computer chips, which I knew nothing about. So I had to take all these manuals and I was learning. So anyway, it started from there. And once I stayed at Intel, I was hired into their sort of trainee program, which I could choose any 4 groups at the company. So I did a rotation through marketing and through legal and through microprocessor design, software. So I got to explore. But long story short, I figured out that I loved computer engineering. I wanted to build these chips, and I was able to work with the smartest people. And I was working on the Itanium microprocessor, which was the 7th generation after the 486, 586 was Pentium, then Pentium Pro, then Itanium. And I got to design a pretty sizable piece of that chip. And a lot of the work I did in those days, I think it's some of my best work, working with smart people. So I have about 5 patents for the innovation that we did at Intel, optimizing algorithms at the transistor level. So that's sort of where I started. And while I was doing this, I sort of realized that, look, the people I'm working with here are the smartest people that I've met in my life. I mean, highest IQ, brilliant people. But they've been working here at this company for 20 years. Yeah, they're doing well in their life, but they could probably do so much more if they were to go out on their own. They're so brilliant. And I thought I should go out and try something. So eventually, I looked around me what was happening at that time. The internet was just being born, and I got to live through that in the heart of the valley where everything was being invented. This is the day before the web browser. There was a Mosaic browser. There was a Netscape ka browser aaya tha. AOL bought Netscape, this whole history, and then Internet Explorer aaya tha, then Chrome. So this whole journey of people going from offline to online, or ye jo startups was what start with bahut sare. Just like the startup boom we saw in Pakistan, abhi to we saw it very late in our history, but we saw crazy investment into internet companies. Everybody had .com this, .com that, koi ye startup kar raha hai, koi wo startup kar raha hai. And you saw people from very qualified people from industry leaving their jobs to do startups because venture capital is what it started to flow. Like $1.2 billion a year started flowing in that area. So all of a sudden I said, well, I'm wasting my time. I should be out there. The world is changing. There's a revolution. So I founded my first internet startup. I actually was playing with 2 ideas. I had some friends from Intel, and so that was my first experience with the internet. And I saw it grow, and then I saw the .com crash, I saw what happened in between. My first startup, it went through an acquisition, went through that whole process, very stressful. And then eventually I found myself in a position where my parents had moved back to Pakistan, I wanted to be with them. So I was trying to figure out, acha, main kya karu? So if I go back to Pakistan, I certainly can't design computer chips, idhar tumhara infrastructure nahi hai. But Pakistan has really good software developers, very cheap, and I can build all kinds of internet things in Pakistan. So I moved back to Pakistan, packed it up, and came back to Lahore. And wahan se started our first venture, which was Naseeb.com, a social networking site. It did tremendously well. It became a cash cow. 4 people in my house. Every student we knew in the US was on the site. This is when the social media boom was just starting. Facebook had just started around that time. So that was a very good phase. But then as we grew on Naseeb, we needed to hire. So I had previously put, my other colleagues, most of whom are still with me today, in a small room of my house, where we moved to an office. Or per office mein humne aur hiring ki. But hiring ke liye we needed to find a way to bring people in. And in those days, the way you would hire was you'd put an ad in Dawn on the back page, wo 8 lakh ka ad tha. In today's terms, that's like 20 lakh because the rupee is devalued. It was expensive. So, seeing from my experience in the US, I thought it was absurd to have to pay 8 lakhs to advertise a job in the newspaper, and wo ek din ke liye aayega aur fir bas, that's it. So we launched Rozee around that time, and Rozee grew very quickly, and it became the largest jobs platform in the country. 10 million professionals have uploaded their CVs, 40,000 job applications a month, about 60,000 employers who use it to hire. So we saw this online growth very quickly. And Rozee then became the largest employment platform in the country. So jaise wo hua, we saw the impact. Millions of people who are able to use your platform and find jobs and create livelihoods. Very exciting to be able to do that. And I think from that time, I just became madly in love with building things for the Pakistani market. Building Pakistani useful platforms for people in Pakistan, and then seeing the impact. And in many ways, it might not be the smartest thing to do. It's much smarter to earn in dollars than to earn in rupees. But I think that's the price of passion that you have. And for me, all the ventures I'm doing now, you mentioned stuff we're doing in the sort of fintech space. I was fortunate to have been part of the founding team that launched the first smartphone wallet, the first telco agnostic wallet on your phone. You can open a full-fledged bank account by entering your ID card. We were the first ones to do that. We worked with State Bank. We were the first ones to get a pilot license for the EMI. बहुत सी original चीजें उस वक्त हमने की थी. And this is the same process that's used now with most banks and their banking apps. But because we were the first ones to do it, we had to find out how to make it work. And उसके बाद it's been a tremendous journey figuring out the financial space where now more and more people are transacting online, and the possibility of building online sort of platforms and models that can be monetized and produce real value, not just for the rich, but all the way down to the very uneducated people who have smartphones, but now who have AI and they can do things a lot more easily, and we can help them. So this has been the sort of journey.
Okay, so you talked about your journey, and right now you're working with Dukan. So a very natural question, that comes to my mind as someone who is, going through all of this in this age, right? Like Dukan in context to Pakistan is like a very big thing. So what specific insight or idea eventually led you to develop this into a fully fledged platform?
Look, Dukan has been, it's been so much fun, and it's been a constant iterative experiment. I can't tell you how many iterations we've done of the Dukan model. There's been an obsession, and what led to it? Well, a number of things. One thing that led to it was my experience in the previous ventures that I've been involved with, working with these little retail stores, undocumented, छोटे-छोटे आपके जो मोहल्ले के जो shops हैं जहाँ पर हम लोग जाते हैं, they operate in a very primitive way, but they're a very essential part of the economy of the country. आपका पूरा food chain उसके through आपके घर में आता है. So then COVID hit. So knowing what I knew about these merchants, having interacted very closely with them on previous things I was doing, and then COVID hitting. And COVID में ये हुआ था कि ये सारे stores now they closed down, and they were in severe financial distress. I used to go to my market every day and talk to these shop owners who had their half-shut shops because they weren't allowed to open, but उनकी आमदनी कोई नहीं थी. And they were all saying, काश हमारे पास ये online ordering होता है, क्योंकि Food Panda चल रहा था and these other platforms were running. And I thought, I can help them with this. ये क्या इसमें क्या बात है? आपको phone के ऊपर you want to be able to do online things. मैं तो ये करता हूँ. I build wallets. I know how to build e-commerce platforms and mobile apps and इनको जोड़ना और ये सारा नादरा के साथ KYC. I mean, I've built all of this stuff before. So my imagination basically it took over, and I fell in love with the idea of doing something like this. So that's when sat inside one of these stores and worked with the owner. We installed some software for him first to see if he would use these scanners. We inventory का we installed software. हमने उसकी help की. उसको mobile smartphone भी दिया. अच्छा से कुछ होता है. Learned a lot of things about their behavior. This is primary knowledge that we're gathering. And they were building software, trying it out. ये नहीं काम कर रहा, ये नहीं इस्तेमाल कर रहा, वो नहीं इस्तेमाल कर रहा. We learned a lot of things in the Dukan journey. But this was basically the primary purpose, is to help these undocumented businesses who are making money get more efficient. So they aren't left behind as all of us privileged people adopt AI and smartphones and tools, and we're doing things and saving money and making more money. This is a segment of society that is being left behind because nobody's interested in helping them. This is, you have to love the Pakistani market and really be passionate about making a difference to stick your hand in this.
Okay.
There's not a lot of money. It really has to grow fast, and you can make a lot more money doing other things. But this is such a complex problem, such an interesting puzzle to try to solve, and the reward of solving it is basically prosperity for 40% of the country's GDP, these small merchants. So that was sort of the idea behind it.
Okay, that is very, very interesting. Okay, so one question, which comes to my mind, listening about your journey with Dukan, is that how did you get, our traditional, like stores to embrace digitization? Because, in Pakistan, it's something which is still relatively in its early stages, right? It's not matured enough, right? So giving that access to people who are running stores, how did you convince them? Like, did you face any issues or hurdles?
Yeah, I mean, that's precisely the problem. Adoption is precisely the problem. हम तो बड़ी cool चीजें हम बना सकते हैं कि ये भी हो जाए, पिक्चर भी हो जाए, इन्वेंटरी भी अपडेट हो जाए, वो भी करेंगे. हर ऑर्डर पे आपने इसके अंदर एंटर करना है, फोन नंबर भी डालेंगे, एसएमएस भेजेंगे. So we invent all of these use cases that we think are brilliant, और फिर उनको हम फील्ड में फेंकते हैं. कहते हैं ये क्या है, इसमें तो टाइम लग रहा है, ये बहुत स्लो है, मेरे पास 3 लोग हैं लाइन में, मैं इसमें एंट्री डालूं और मेरे पास 14,000 स्टॉक आइटम्स हैं, उनकी इन्वेंटरी में डालता रहा हूं. So there's so many learnings. You build something, you fall flat on your face, then you get up and you say, how do you fix this? And then you go one problem by the next problem by the next problem, and then you realize that if you experiment enough, and it's very costly to experiment, you really have to find the product market fit. It's not natural. This problem hasn't been solved anywhere in the world. You're solving it for the first time for your people. And you iterate enough and you find out that there's some really essential use cases that they will cling to. You don't have to sell them or convince them. वो क्या है? वो use cases हैं जिससे उनकी आमदनी में इजाफा आता है या अखराजात में they get less expenses, right? 2 things. If you can do that for any merchant, he's going to go over backwards on your app and enter his ID card and do a flip for you. So we're focusing on those use cases that can make it much easier for him to get money in. In retail stores, we're giving this RAST P2M QR code, which means कि किसी भी banking app के साथ उसका QR code scan करेंगे, सीधे उसके account में जाएगा. Whichever account he has, he doesn't have to make a new account. It takes a minute to sign up. Now you can accept cash in a digital channel. You can do a tap on your phone with your credit card, and this phone will accept your credit card. तो अब उसके incoming payments आ रहे हैं. Is a certain segment of the customers who are now paying him through a digital channel. So he's making money through you. He loves you because you've made it easy for him to get money. Not just get that money, but use that money. Transfer it onwards. Uske saath he can sell airtime, make more money. Uske saath he can buy supplies directly from suppliers that he already buys from. Un suppliers ko bhi uske phone ke upar le aate hain. We interconnect them with the distributors we already use. Uske through ordering ho rahi hai, to payment ho raha hai. Jaise ye digital flow mein aa gayi hain iski cheezein, guess what? I can credit score it. I can take a risk on him. मुझे पता है कि इसके इनकम का I have a proxy for his income, a proxy for his expenses. I know कि इतने रेंज के लोन तक तो ये आराम से ले लेगा. And then what happens? All of a sudden you open up this 40% of your economy, all of these SMEs, to digital credit जो कि इनको नहीं मिलता. And it's been proven globally that unless businesses get credit, they're not going to grow. Very difficult. They get stuck in a cash flow cycle. So we don't give these guys credit. So all of a sudden, you're seeing this massive impact where you can digitize businesses, help them make more money, give them access to credit, let them buy more supplies, let them sell online eventually, let them be able to put their goods on like a Daraz, whatever. Help them with their last mile order delivery. ये पूरा ecosystem एक दफा create हो जाता है, इसके साथ many things plug in, and your whole economy now starts to hum. Because the entire supply chain and service providers and people who sell insurance and ये सब इसके अंदर now they're plugged in. तो इसमें बहुत खुशहाली है. Very difficult to do. Yeah. So we're trying to boil the ocean on 2 ends and make sure that ocean interconnects. We don't know if we will. It's looking very good so far. Very excited, but we'll see what happens.
No, that's very interesting. And so I'm a business student, and within when we in our classes when we discuss businesses like this, one of the first questions that students tend to ask is, well, how does this particular business generate revenue while ensuring that it is sustainable for the target population? So I'm really interested in finding out how that works for Dukan.
So no business can survive unless it's profitable, and no business is interesting unless you can increase its profitability over time and grow it. So my philosophy has always been, I think it's shown through things I've done, I've been very patient, maybe overly patient, but I firmly believe that if you are creating value real value, not just artificial value. Okay, I got people on the app, if it results in financial value, that value is going to translate into your ability to monetize it. Until you have value and you try to monetize something that you're still testing or you don't have enough scale on, you're adding friction to its growth. So all the models have been to test it out and scale it and figure out agar value create ho rahi hai. The moment you turn that on and you have 100,000 shops with you और आपने उसको on कर दिया, boom, आपकी income from zero to hero हो जाती है, right? And then you keep scaling it. So the Dukan model is very much a scale play. So we are profitable now, Allah ka shukr hai. So we worked very hard. I've been doing this for a while and I don't like the idea of being dependent on VC to survive. I can talk about that for a very, very long time. So for Dukan, it became a priority to become cash flow positive very quickly. तो हमने full जान लगाई, ये भी किया, वो भी किया, ऐसे बनाए, पैसे ऐसे बनाए. And now we're in a position where we can keep doing these things and we have more patience for doing the right thing at the right time as opposed to jaldi se, slaughtering the chicken even though ande nahi aaye abhi, right? So how do we make money? Well, how we make money is we give these white labeled banking apps to our partners, like Easy Paisa is using our app. इनके retailers इस app के ऊपर आ रहे हैं. It's called the Karobar app. It's a co-branded app. It's in partnership with Dukan. We have the software behind it. अब ये install करें on their retail merchants. उसके through they can buy stock, they can get loans. और भी चीजें आ रही हैं. We're doing this with a number of other banks to power their digital banking apps to our platform. जिसके अंदर bank account भी है, wallet भी है, QR code भी अंदर आ रहा है. A number of banks are now using our platform. So they pay us for that. We get recurring fees from it. And then what we do is, we build this in a partnership. We don't charge that much for this software. Hamara goal ye hai ki to build success together. So we take a revenue share in all of the transactions and the lending income and everything that's going in this fabric that we're creating and interconnecting. And that's a big prize. So our prize is, if this all works and it scales well, phir hum achhe khaase paise banayenge. And if it doesn't, then we're just making these small amounts of money as we keep installing our apps into the ecosystem. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think moving on, as a student of economics, right, I just, wanted to know and explore, okay, how do you think Dukan, by the services that it is offering, can contribute to the larger macroeconomic success of Pakistan?
Yeah, okay. So, first of all, these SMEs that we're going after, 2 million SMEs plus, are 40% of the GDP of the country. 40% of the GDP is coming from these chote mom and pop shops. Now imagine if we can do digital interventions where we increase their income by 50%. अगर उसकी 50,000 की आमदनी पहले थी और आपके टूल्स की वजह से अब 1 लाख हो गई, you've increased them 100%, from 50 to 75. ठीक है? Realistic. Through these online tools, he can now buy stock online, he can buy on credit, so he can buy more supplies, he can sell more, he gets paid in through a digital channel, the cash movement, all of this stuff. So by digitizing them and interconnecting them, if you can increase their income by 50%, look at what you've done to the GDP of Pakistan. And then that extra money coming in on a macroeconomic level goes down. Employment create hoti hai usse, right? You have a consumption increase hoti hai. So your whole economy gets stimulated if we take the bottom of the pyramid, the undocumented SMEs, along with us on the journey to prosperity, which we're not currently. Ye jo hamara split hai na, it's growing like this. So we have to take them along. Hamara hi fayda hai. When these guys grow, the people at the top will also grow.
Okay, so that is like very, very interesting, right? जो आपने मतलब overall economic landscape की आपने जो बात की है. But one thing, which I was thinking about is कि how do you see जो retail or distribution का एक landscape है in a time of about like a decade? Do you think it will grow like more digitized? And if it is going to grow, how fast do you think digitization will enter this landscape?
That's a good question. And I think the way to look at this is to just understand why they exist. and what they do in the ecosystem. And there are lots of things that exist today but don't necessarily make a lot of sense, right? So उस lens से देखना पड़ेगा. एक आपको example देता हूँ, bank branch. Why do you need a bank branch? Do you like to go to a bank branch? Do you like to stand in line? और वो आपको ख्वार करें? And then it's a horrible feeling. Nobody likes to go to a bank branch. You earn money, you take it, you drive to the bank branch, you get inconvenienced, stand in line, have to deal with attitude, fill out forms, and then you give your money to the bank. It's your money, आपने बैंक में रखा है. You go home, then you need your money, again आप उधर से जाके ख्वार वो कहते नहीं आपको नहीं दे सकते, ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है, right? आपके पैसे, and you're wasting time driving and coming back, it's your own money. Now this concept of a bank branch you're seeing is going to be quickly obsolete. Branchless is growing. Of course, in our country, it takes time. You still need branches for certain things. But the dependence on branches is drastically coming down, and it should come down. So if you're to make a new bank today, would you make a branch bank or a branchless bank, a digital bank? You'd probably make a digital bank now because you can. And that's what's happened. Licenses bhi aage hain, state bank ki aur ban rahe. So let's go back now to distribution ecosystem ki jo aap baat kar rahe hain. What really is a distributor? A distributor is doing two things. One, distributors are financing the FMCGs. They're the investors. वो उनसे stock wholesale में खरीदते हैं. They're investors for a certain price, so they buy it 100 rupees, then they do a sale for 110 rupees, 120 rupees, but they are investing in the stock. So for most of the companies, distributors का फायदा ये होता है कि वो उनके investors हैं, they're bankers. दूसरा क्या काम होता है? दूसरा इसका काम होता है कि अपने वेयरहाउस में डालें, उसको स्टोर करें closer to the shops, और फिर अपने राइडर्स के थ्रू do the orders and the delivery in that area. वो काम कर रहे हैं. अब financing of this stock is something that people would love to do if they can make money. If I need to finance, if you're a shop, I need to finance stock, and I'm financing you, and I know, okay, if you buy 100 pieces, you'll sell 100 pieces, and you'll make 20 rupees on it, और उसमें से आप मुझे, you'll give me 5 rupees, मैं कहूँगा ठीक है मेरे पैसे ले लें. So the whole financial ecosystem can theoretically become the financiers of products. That need can be met. But then you have a delivery, the last mile. Who's going to do that? उधर भी opportunity है, but उधर देखिए हमारे ecosystem में there's so many players, InDrive है, Bikeia है. Eventually, if the volumes increase, then the last mile problem can probably be solved. Then the warehousing problem. So I'm saying that basically going into the future, as each of these ecosystems evolve, the financial ecosystem for financing, delivery ecosystem for last mile, storage warehouses like FBA, on Amazon, it's stored in their warehouse and they do all the deliveries from there. ये सारे models आप देखेंगे कि आएंगे. So it will totally disrupt in the future. Now what it's going to look like, we don't know. But we know that things are changing. We don't know when they're going to change. But what we know for sure is we want to be part of that digital journey. अगर यहाँ तक हम पहुँच जाते हैं और ecosystem इधर आता है, then we can help take the ecosystem there quickly.
All this discussion about Dukan has definitely been very interesting, but that's not the only success that you've had, because Rozee, as we discussed earlier as well, was an initiative that has, of course, been like a booming name, like a household name even within Pakistan. So, and you mentioned this, which I found really interesting, that it initially started off sort of like a side project to the main, like Naseeb.com. And I really want to know, like, at what point did you realize that, okay, this thing that I'm doing as sort of like a secondary thing is really the big deal, And so many people have like hobbies or maybe side projects that they don't realize can actually grow into something so much bigger. So what factors influence the growth of such an idea, and also what key decisions do you think you made along the way that really helped grow it into the platform that we see today?
Yeah, so look, when I left the US, this is about 2003, I believe. This is right after the dot-com crash. उधर भी एक boom आया था, crash आया था. ये सारे companies, $1.5 billion invested every month. Most of them shut down. Some survived. So nobody knew what would work on the internet. Internet was new. Dogfood.com से लेके anything, It was all there. We didn't know what would actually work. तो ये dot-com जब crash हो रहा था, then you saw the 3, 4, 5, 6 startups that were actually making money and doing well. That's around the time I moved back, and I was studying them very carefully. And at that time, what was making money was online matchmaking, making a lot of money, and jobs, job classifieds, making a lot of money. So when I came to Pakistan, I chose to make the social networking site because 911 ke baad tha and Muslims in overseas countries felt very fragmented and unable to form groups, and you felt like you were being attacked from all sides. So Naseeb was born right after 911 to give a forum for, Muslims overseas to interact and interconnect and sort of build bonds and friendships. It's very successful. But then uske saath saath, I always had in my mind that Pakistan needs a jobs platform. And when we first had that pain point, I said, this is time to build it, because I wanted to build it at some point anyway. So Rozee was born because it was one of the things we wanted to do. And then we really worked hard to grow Rozee, and I think we did some very crazy things, the way we did the guerrilla marketing in this country to get growth. I'm very, very proud of that in the early days. Like, we were probably the first ones to brand on the back of rickshaws. There was a no-no at that time, so don't put your ad on brand of a rickshaw. We found out how to do it very cheaply. We had no money. We got massive awareness. We did these job fairs. Hundreds of thousands of people would attend these job fairs. Employers would come. We would connect them in real life. So we did many, many crazy things to get awareness without spending a lot of money, to become the primary hiring platforms for most of the large organizations, to now. So it's been so long. Now, if you fast forward, we saw Rozee in its height being an essential tool where everybody had their CV. And then we saw that all of a sudden, like everything else on the internet, things start to change. New cheezein aa jati hain. Indeed aa gaya, LinkedIn aa gaya. There are many other ways to apply for jobs now. Rozee is still very strong, but we're seeing that hamara future idhar nahi hai. This is now a commoditized space. So we launched Rozee.pk.ai. This is completely taught first principles, jobs platform for Pakistan. Ab AI aa gaya hai. What would that look like? So we reinvented ourselves, we disrupted ourselves, and launched an AI version of Rozee called Rozee.pk.ai. It's fantastic, and it plugs into Rozee and the data, and we have these agentic bots now, so you might get a message from us. If your CV matches a job, it'll feel like a human being. They'll be telling you why you're a good match for that job and encouraging you to apply. We'll be helping you build a CV directly on your WhatsApp. We'll be helping blue-collar workers through Urdu voice notes, build CVs, find jobs. So AI ki wajah se, where Rozee is going now is super, super exciting. It's incredibly exciting. Where we are today, what we've already built in the last 6 months, and what's coming out 6 months from now.
Very interesting. Okay, so raising Pakistan's first, venture capital funding round in 2008 was a major milestone, right? So I wanted to ask that, what was the process like, especially at a time when startup funding was almost unheard of in the country?
So, well, it's a funny story. We weren't really intending to raise funding at that time. We started to get inbound emails from some hedge fund in New York saying that they had billions of dollars invested and they wanted to explore investing in Rozee. I thought it was a hoax. It looked like one of those Nigerian emails, billions of dollars. It turned out it was a proper hedge fund. We got a term sheet from them. They were also invested in a competitor. So then they changed the term sheet 3 times. It kept getting worse and worse. And then I felt like we had no sort of leverage if we raised money. And we weren't very eager to raise money, but we thought, well, if I can raise money, I can hire a bigger sales team and I can grow this faster. It's already growing. So then needed an option to that, sort of felt that had no sort of leverage as an entrepreneur. Ki bas yehi deal hai, leni hai, le lo, warna bhag jao. So then I flew back to the US. Sand Hill Road is a road where all the VCs are on in the valley. And I had some introductions made by good friends like Reid Hoffman, who's a LinkedIn founder, also early investor in what we were doing. And so I met with many VC funds, told them what's going on. Most of them didn't really know where we were. Pakistan, where is it? And what they did know wasn't very good. They had images of people, strapped to bombs, blowing themselves up. So there was a lot of ignorance about what was happening in Pakistan. So the major challenge was not convincing them on the business, which at that time was growing like this. The major challenge was convincing them to invest in Pakistan. So most of my slides were convincing them on why they should be investing in Pakistan. And I was right, but probably about 10 years too early in my projections.
Okay, so again about Rozee and like its growth, we want to know, is there anything that, looking back now, you think you wish that you had done differently, or any lessons or takeaways that you wish to share with other people who are perhaps looking into sort of expanding into this field of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that I think I've learned, mistakes I've made that have been very valuable lessons for me today. I feel very privileged to be where I am today because I have lots of war wounds, and I've learned so much about building startups, managing partnerships, pros and cons of investment, how to build tech very quickly, how to understand the financial technology landscape, to working in the field and understanding the local market super, super well. And all of these came about through many mistakes I've made. So I think it's super important to fail and learn from those failures, but it's even more important to leverage that failure to do something very powerful because of those failures. And I think most people, what they do is once they fail, they give up, and then they never manage to reap the benefit of those failures. So I'm very optimistic about where we are today, and I'm optimistic because of things that have gone right in the past for us, alhamdulillah, but more so because of the things that haven't gone right, and I have the opportunity now to do one more time and do it in a way that I'm very confident will lead to success because of the mistakes I made in the past.
Okay, so one thing that I was very, very much curious about is, you talked about startups and the startup ecosystem in Pakistan specifically. But from past few years, we saw Pakistan's economic conditions, they just worsened. And the startup ecosystem isn't, it's not as active and booming as it used to. So how do you see its future? If I were to give you a time frame of say 5 years, right? How would you see the startup ecosystem evolving?
So this is, when you talk about vibrancy of the ecosystem, how did we judge vibrancy? We judged a large number of startups being created. Why were they created? Because they got funding. Why did they get funding? Because there was availability of VCs and investment into Pakistan. So basically that led the charge of all of this activity. And this was happening globally after COVID. Many people had a lot of money in their accounts that they needed to move, so they needed to invest it. So then they founded small little groups of investors and larger investment funds. A lot of cash, liquidity was in the investment market. They needed a place to put it. Interest rates in the US were so low. Though VC funds got money all over. And they said, okay, where's the next place, right? China, too late. Indonesia, too late. What's next? And Pakistan, the fifth most populous nation in the world, where digitization is exploding now. We're seeing it. Ye ho gaya, fintech, everybody has bank accounts, wallets, internet, smartphones, ye sari cheezein ho gayi. This market's hot. So that was a natural place to invest. So bahut se funds aa gaye the, and they invested, and then lots of people quit their jobs or moved back from overseas, started startups. Aur phir kya hua ke whenever you have your first wave of new investors come in, there's a lot of naivety. Those investors haven't really built businesses before. They're seeing what's happening in other countries. They're doing photocopies, Excel sheet. So there's a lot of naive investors. But entrepreneurs don't realize an investor is naive, because if they have millions of dollars to give, whatever they say seems to be right. वो कहते हैं इस तरह का startup करो क्योंकि इंडोनेशिया में चला था, वो आप इस तरह का startup कर देंगे. हालांकि it makes no sense. So we saw a lot of that activity where founder, VC, sort of love affair led to creation of these little Frankenstein type monster startups, but there are also the very good startups that also got created, right? But the majority went into distress because they didn't have a revenue model. Financial crisis again, liquidity stopped. There were no investors who had money, who wanted to invest in Pakistan. All of these startups that started to grow no longer had funding to continue because they didn't have a business model and they weren't profitable enough yet. So companies that weren't able to get profitable died. And the companies that were able to build real business models and survive without VC fundings, they're still growing. और इनमें से ही आपके हीरोज निकलेंगे. So you're going to see a second wave that's going to come. The same thing happened in the US as well. तो अब आज के जो entrepreneurs हैं, ये वो वाले होंगे who are building real businesses, real business models, ability to monetize them quickly, and not a pie in the sky idea that somebody said is doing really well in Indonesia, and it turned out 3 years later that it failed in Indonesia and it failed everywhere else in the world, but you put hundreds of millions of dollars into it, right? This has happened as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very exciting time. It's a very exciting time because you're now starting to see some really cool startups and business models that work. हमारा ecosystem भी RAS की वजह से payment, wallets, smartphones, all of this interconnect, हमारा ecosystem भी जाग गया है. Now you can build things and make money on it that you couldn't 2 years ago. So as this happens, you're going to find real startups getting created, and you're going to find that this is a real industry that's making real money. उनमें से कुछ exits भी होंगे. Larger companies will swallow them up because, hey, I want this, it's making money, real money. And once this starts, then you get this cycle of innovation that happens. When you have larger companies or acquisitions happening, ताकि ये exits हों, and these people make some money, and you have this ecosystem that's ready, and you're building startups that make sense because you have this whole ecosystem and you know where to make the money from. This is the second wave of entrepreneurship, जो कि लाजमी आएगा, थोड़ा slow आएगा, क्योंकि VC investment नहीं है, तो it's going to take those brave entrepreneurs who are going to basically sacrifice everything for a shot to make an impact.
I hope I am one of those
Inshallah.
entrepreneurs.
Inshallah.
So I think moving on to like closing remarks. You know, I'm young. She's young. Like we're all.
I'm young too.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs, like who are like starting out, and people like us who are still young and have aspirations?
Like us. Huh. Okay, yeah, well, look, it's a very personal thing, right? And for me to project my ambitions and, what I think is a cool path onto everybody else is very unfair. Everybody is made in a different way. Everybody has a different risk appetite. Everybody has a different needs in terms of what makes them feel happy. But what I can say is this, that if you're passionate and you're willing to make sacrifices which may not lead to success, then there's no more exciting place to be than Pakistan right now. Because this whole economy is digitizing. आपकी macro economy shrink भी कर रही हो, जो कि in some cases it is. The online economy is growing very, very quickly, even amongst this sort of contraction, because everybody's moving online. So you're always going to be very strategic if you're digitizing the economy. You're going to be an enabler for this economy to survive. This is a Pakistan market, which many of us are like, yeah, Pakistan नहीं रहना, बाहर जाना है, बाहर काम करना है, बाहर study करना है, खुदाफिज Pakistan, goodbye. So I'm seeing a lot of this feeling amongst the youth, especially the educated youth, the privileged youth, which is really the backbone of our future. And it's very understandable to feel this way. And that's why I'm saying that, telling everybody ki yaar na jao bahar, na karo, idhar hi raho, kuch karo idhar, it's sort of unfair. But for me personally, I've made a decision that this is the right time to make a tremendous difference, make a contribution, see something really cool happening. Yeah, you can probably make more money somewhere else, but the kind of things you can learn here and leverage as a platform to go someplace else is also tremendous. Start something in Pakistan, make it cool, build it, see it work, फिर जाके Saudi Arab लेके जाओ, Africa लेके जाओ, Vietnam लेके जाओ. Once you have that expertise, you can do anything. Pakistan is probably one of the best test markets to build something in and prove it works.
Well, that was a very, very interesting insight, and thank you for being here and sharing your insight. I think it was a very productive conversation, and I hope the audience, all the people who watch this,
All 4 of them.
yes, and all those who watch it online, they get to learn something important.
Yeah,
Thank you so
definitely.
much for giving me.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you.